The sea taught lessons the Red Keep never had. It did not care for titles, for silk, for the careful placement of smiles. It took what it wanted and demanded balance in return. Sansa learned that balance on her second night aboard, when the wind shifted and the ship began to climb and fall like a living thing. The cabin had seemed cramped but safe until the first hard lurch sent her stomach into her throat. She had made it to the deck only barely, clinging to the ladder rungs with white knuckles while the sailors shouted above her and the rain came down in needles. Ned found her there, bent over the rail, hair stuck to her cheeks, the dignity of court left somewhere in the black water behind them. He held her back when she swayed, his palm firm between her shoulder blades as the ship pitched. "I'm sorry," she managed, voice cracked and small. "For what?" he asked. For being weak," she whispered, and the confession stung worse than the salt on her lips. "Arya isn't sick. The septa isn't sick. The septa is sick below," Arya called, delighted by the storm, her eyes bright with the thrill of motion and danger. She prayed and then Arya made an obscene retching sound that would have earned her a slap from Septa Mordain on any other day. "Enough," Ned snapped, then softened as Sansa flinched. He kept his hand steady on her back. "The sea doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Sansa swallowed hard and stared out at the gray-black water. The horizon was a smear. The sky and sea blended into one bruised expanse. "I don't feel human," she whispered. "I feel like I'm losing everything." Ned looked toward the prow, where Tomard and the captain stood arguing over the set of the sail, their voices swallowed by the wind. "You have not lost everything," he said. "You have your life." Sansa's laugh was thin. "Is that meant to comfort me?" "It is meant to be true," Ned said. The ship surged upward on a wave. Sansa's fingers clenched on the rail. Ned felt her tremble through the wet wool of her cloak. Somewhere behind them, a sailor cursed as a rope snapped taut, and another man's laugh broke sharp and mad with exhaustion. Ned's gaze slid to the tarpaulin lashed near the mast. Beneath it, cages shifted and rattled. Ravens, restless and angry, their black eyes flashing when lightning cracked. The captain had insisted on bringing them. "A ship without messages is a ship without eyes," he'd said, and Ned had paid him extra to keep his mouth shut and his birds alive. Sansa followed his gaze. "Are those ravens?" "Yes," Ned said. "For the letters." She looked back at him, rain on her lashes, and something tightened in Ned's chest. Sansa had always loved ravens in Winterfell, had always begged to feed them bits of bread and watch them hop and caw. Here, she looked at them like they were knives. "Will they reach Winterfell?" she asked. "They will if the gods are kind," Ned said. "And if the Lannisters have not already choked the skies with their own birds." Sansa shivered, though it was not cold alone that did it. "And if they do, what then?" Ned could have lied. In the Red Keep, lies were armor. But armor had holes, and he had seen too many people bleed through them. "Then your brother will know what has happened," he said. "Your mother will know, and the men of the North will prepare." Sansa's throat worked. "For war." Ned did not deny it. "For what comes?" A fresh gust slammed the ship. The deck tilted. Sansa's knees buckled and Ned caught her, hauling her closer. For a moment she clung to him, her face pressed into his shoulder, and he felt the faint shaking of her breaths. "I used to think," she whispered into his cloak, voice muffled, "that the worst thing in the world would be never leaving Winterfell." Ned looked out into the storm and thought of the city they'd fled, thought of Cersei's smile, of Joffrey's soft hands and hard eyes. "And now?" he asked. Sansa lifted her head slowly. Rain slid down her face like tears she hadn't earned. "Now I think the worst thing would be going back." Ned's hand cupped the back of her skull, careful, steady. "Then you will not," he promised, and let the words carve themselves into him like a vow. Behind them, Arya whooped as lightning split the sky. The sailors shouted again, and the ship fought onward through the teeth of the wind, carrying wolves toward the shore where war waited with open hands. They made landfall not at White Harbor, Not anywhere a Stark name would be greeted with open gates, but at a small, stinking dock where fish guts and wet reeds clung to the air. The captain chose it because it was forgettable, because it was the sort of place men passed through without looking twice, unless they were hunting. Fog lay thick, turning torchlight into dull halos. The ship bumped the pilings with a soft, hollow thud, and ropes were thrown, tied, tightened. Ned waited until the gangplank was set before he moved his daughters, one hand on Sansa's elbow, the other close enough to Arya's shoulder that he could pull her back if she darted. "Keep your hood up," he murmured. Sansa nodded, but the motion was stiff. She had not slept much. The storm had battered the ship for a day and a night. The sea had left her hollowed out. Her eyes moved constantly now, flicking to shadows, to silhouettes, to every torch-bearing stranger. She had learned in a single week what it took Catelyn years to teach. Safety was something you watched for and made, not something you were given. Septa Mordain came last, clutching a small bundle to her chest as if it contained her faith itself. Her face was drawn, her lips chapped, her prayers worn thin from use. Yet she walked with them, and that counted for something. On the dock waited two men in rough cloaks. One held a lantern shaded with his hand. The other rested his palm on a cudgel at his belt. Neither bowed, neither smiled. They looked at Ned like men who had been paid to look and not ask. The lantern man's gaze slid over Ned's plain clothes, the mud on his boots, then lingered on Sansa's face beneath the hood. Just long enough. Ned felt his spine tighten. He stepped half a pace closer, blocking the angle without seeming to. "Captain says you've coin," the lantern man said. Ned pulled a small pouch from inside his cloak and tossed it. The man caught it, weighed it, grunted. "You'll take the road north," the second man said, voice flat. "Not the King's Road. Too many eyes. We'll guide you to the Trident, then leave you." "Who sent you?" Ned asked. The lantern man shrugged. "A man who likes birds." Ned's mouth went hard. "Varys, then. Or someone wearing Varys like a mask. In King's Landing, even help tasted of poison." "Fine," Ned said. "We go now." They did not linger. Ned did not want the ship's captain to be tempted by a richer offer, and he did not want the dock to become a place where too many men remembered the shape of a red-haired girl's face. They moved away from the water into narrow lanes where the fog thickened between leaning buildings. Somewhere a dog barked, sharp and suspicious. A woman's laugh rose and fell like a blade. The town smelled of ale and piss and old smoke. It was not King's Landing, but it had the same undertone. Life crowded too tight, desperation pressed into every brick. Sansa stumbled once on uneven stone. Arya caught her elbow before she fell, surprising them both. Sansa looked at her sister, startled, and Arya scowled as if she hadn't meant to be kind. "Don't trip," Arya muttered. "You'll make noise." Sansa's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Thank you." Arya shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Just watch your feet." They found a stable at the edge of the town. Horses stood in dark stalls, their eyes reflecting lantern light. Ned chose mounts that would not draw attention. No proud chargers, no glossy war horses. Plain beasts for plain travelers. His daughters looked wrong atop them, even in wool and mud. Sansa too straight-backed despite the exhaustion. Arya too alert, eyes scanning like she expected an enemy behind every post. As they rode out under the cover of fog, Ned glanced back once. The ship was already a shadow at the dock, sails lowered, as if it had never existed. The Blackwater was far behind them now, and with it the last easy escape. Sansa's voice came small beside him. "Are we in the Riverlands?" "Yes," Ned said. "Does Mother know?" she asked. Ned's jaw tightened. "Not yet. Soon." Sansa swallowed. In the fog, her hood shadowed her face, but Ned could feel her hope like warmth. Hope was dangerous, could make you careless. Ahead, the lantern man raised his light, signaling a turn toward a narrow track. The road disappeared into reeds and darkness. Ned set his horse after him and felt the world close in. Mud and night and the sound of distant water. Somewhere, far behind, riders would be leaving King's Landing with torches and orders and rage. Here, in the fog, the hunt had not yet found their scent. But it would. The fog thinned by dawn, but the world it revealed was no kinder. The Riverlands spread out in damp fields and low hills, stitched with streams that gleamed like knives. Mist clung to the reeds along the waterways, and the ground sucked at hooves as if trying to pull them back. They rode in silence, not because Ned demanded it, but because the land seemed to demand it. Sound carried. A snapped twig, a careless word. Any of it could be a beacon. The lantern man guided them off the more traveled paths, onto tracks used by fishers and farmers. "No one looks for lords in the mud," he said once, as if it were a proverb. Ned did not answer. Lords died in mud as easily as anyone. Sansa did not complain. That alone told Ned how much she had changed. The girl who had once sulked at the thought of cold halls now rode through wet chill with her teeth set and her hands steady on the reins. When her horse slipped, she did not scream. She tightened her legs, breathed through fear, and kept moving. Arya thrived. She rode like she had been born in a saddle, eyes flicking to every line of trees, every bend in water. She wanted a fight. Ned feared she would get one. It came near midday, when the reeds opened onto a narrow stretch where the track ran close to the King's Road. Ned heard them before he saw them. Hooves on firmer ground, the clink of armor, men talking too loudly because they believed themselves safe. The lantern man halted abruptly and raised a fist. They slid off the track into a shallow ditch where wet grass soaked their cloaks. Tomard dismounted without a word, leading the horses down, pressing their muzzles toward the earth to keep them quiet. Sansa's breath came fast. Ned put a finger to his lips and eased her lower, his palm on her shoulder. She obeyed, trembling. Through the reeds, the riders appeared, 6 of them, cloaks red even beneath mud, spears upright. Lannister men or crown men wearing Lannister color because the lion paid better. Their faces were hard, their eyes scanning the road with the practiced suspicion of hunters. One of them laughed. "They say Starks run," he said, voice carrying. "Hand of the king, running like a whipped dog." Another spat. "Should have cut him down at the docks. Could have had a purse from the queen." The third shrugged. "They'll find him. Hound's gone after. And when the Hound hunts, things die." Sansa went very still at that. Ned felt her fingers digging into the mud. He kept his gaze fixed, not on the men's faces, but on their hands, their weapons, their posture. He measured distance and angles as if he were counting steps across a courtyard. If they were found here, there would be no time to mount, no time to flee. Only steel. Arya's hand slid under her cloak. Needle's hilt glinted briefly before disappearing again. Ned's stomach nodded. He leaned closer, barely moving his lips. "No," he whispered. Arya's eyes flashed. "If they see, they won't," Ned murmured. "Breathe." Sansa's throat worked. She forced in a shallow breath, then another. Ned felt a surge of pride so fierce it hurt. Pride not in some courtly accomplishment, but in this, she was doing what she had to do when she was afraid. The riders drew nearer, passing the place where the ditch dipped deepest. One of them turned his head, frowning, as if he'd caught a scent. He slowed. Ned's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword beneath his cloak. Tomard shifted, ready, his shoulders tense as a drawn bow. The rider's horse snorted, ears twitching. The man narrowed his eyes. He leaned down, peering into reeds, and for a heartbeat Ned thought he could see straight through the green into their hiding place. Then the man's companion barked, impatient. "Come on, we'll miss the ford. If Stark's gone north, he's already past this." The suspicious rider hesitated, then spat and kicked his horse forward. The line of red cloaks moved on, their voices fading. Only when the last hoofbeat died did Ned let himself breathe again. His lungs ached as if he'd been underwater. Sansa's shoulders sagged. A soft sound escaped her, half sob, half laugh. She pressed a muddy hand to her mouth to smother it. Arya looked disappointed, like a child denied a toy. Ned looked at both of them. His daughters crouched in mud like fugitives, and felt a cold fury settle deep inside him. Not the hot rage of a boy, something older, steadier. The fury of a man who had seen what the throne did to children. "We keep moving," he said. They rose slowly, careful not to splash, and the ditch swallowed their footprints as if it wanted to hide them too. By the second night on land, fatigue began to gnaw at them like hunger. The horses needed rest. The septa needed water. Even Arya's sharpness dulled at the edges when her head bobbed with exhaustion. They found an inn tucked against a stand of trees, smoke leaking from its chimney into a low sky. It was not a grand place, just rough timber, a sagging roof, and a muddy yard where chickens pecked between footprints. But it had a fire and it had walls. The lantern man did not come inside with them. He took his coin and vanished into the dark like a ghost paid to haunt. The cudgel man followed. Ned watched them go and felt the sudden emptiness of being alone again. Inside, the air was thick with sweat and ale. Men sat elbow to elbow on benches, their faces red from drink and heat. A woman carried bowls of stew through the crowd, her expression wary. A dog slept near the hearth, one ear twitching at every loud voice. Ned kept his hood up and his head down. He chose a corner near the back, where shadows pooled. Tomard and the other Northmen positioned themselves without being told. One near the door, one near the stairs, eyes always moving. Sansa sat beside Ned, hands clasped in her lap. She tried to look like a peasant girl, but her posture betrayed her. She did not know how to slump. She did not know how to disappear. Arya did. Arya melted into the corner like smoke. Septa Mordain sat rigid, lips moving in silent prayer, though whether she prayed for their safety or for forgiveness, Ned could not tell. A man at the center table stood suddenly, swaying. He raised a piece of parchment above his head, waving it like a banner. "Hear this," he shouted. "Hear what the king's men wrote. Hear what our good King Joffrey says." Ned's body went still. Sansa's eyes widened. The man's voice slurred, but the words carried. "Eddard Stark, former hand, is a traitor to the realm," he read, stumbling over the letters. "He conspired to steal the throne from the rightful king." Laughter erupted. Someone threw a crust of bread. The parchment fluttered but did not fall. "Traitor," another man spat, and there was hunger in it, the hunger of people who liked the idea of a powerful man brought low. "They should hang him. They will," the reader crowed. "They'll put his head on a spike. And his wolf pups with him if they find him." Sansa's breath caught. Ned felt her hand dart to his sleeve beneath the table, gripping hard. Her fingers were cold. Arya's head lifted, eyes narrowing like a blade being drawn. Ned kept his face blank, but inside, something cracked and settled into place. So quickly, the ink on Robert's will had barely dried, and already the new king painted him as a monster. Already the realm was being fed a story to justify what would come. The drunk man squinted at the parchment again. "And there's a reward," he said, voice rising, "for any man who brings word. Gold. Real gold." A murmur swept the room. Men leaned closer, suddenly sober in the presence of coin. Sansa's grip tightened until Ned felt her nails through cloth. He leaned closer to her, lips barely moving. "Do not look at them," he whispered. Sansa's eyes were shining. "They're talking about you," she breathed, horrified. They're laughing." "They do not matter," Ned said. "Not tonight." But they did matter. One wrong glance, one woman recognizing the shape of a noble's hands, one drunkard noticing a red-haired girl who carried herself too straight. Any of it could end them. The barmaid approached with stew. Her eyes flicked over Ned's hood, lingered on Sansa. Ned felt his heart thud once, hard. "Hungry?" she asked. "Yes," Ned said, making his voice rougher, lower. She set the bowls down. Her gaze darted again, curious, then slid away. "Coin first." Ned placed a few coppers on the table. The barmaid scooped them up quickly and vanished back into the crowd. Sansa stared down at her stew as if it might bite her. "Father," she whispered. "They'll kill you." Ned's voice was iron soft. They will try. Arya leaned in from the shadows, eyes bright with fury. Let them, she whispered. I'll stab them all. Ned's hand closed over Arya's wrist beneath the table, firm. Not here, he murmured. Not now. He forced himself to eat because a man who did not eat became weak, and weakness got you caught. He spooned stew into his mouth without tasting it, listening to the room. Every laugh, every scrape of bench, every shift of boots. He watched reflections in ale, shadows on walls. Across the inn, the drunk man kept reading, adding flourishes of his own. The king's merciful, he slurred. He'll spare those who kneel. Merciful. Ned tasted the word like ash. Sansa's shoulders trembled once. She set her spoon down with careful control. Then she lifted her chin, just slightly, and Ned saw a change so subtle he might have missed it, her fear sharpening into something else. They can write what they want, she whispered, not to him, but to herself. It doesn't make it true. Ned looked at her, and something fierce and proud flared in him. No, he murmured. It does not. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, and the inn's warmth felt suddenly fragile, like a candle in a storm. They did not sleep long. Ned did not let them. He waited until the inn's noise softened, until bodies slumped over benches and the fire burned lower. He roused his people with a touch and a look. No words. Words could be overheard. Fear did not need language. They slipped out into the yard where the mud was darker and the night colder. The horses shifted in their makeshift pen, sensing movement. Ned's fingers went numb as he tightened girths and checked straps. His mind kept running through the same thoughts like a prayer turned to obsession. Keep them alive, keep them hidden, keep moving. Sansa stood close, lantern hooded, the light a small trembling circle. Her hands shook, but she held it anyway. Arya hovered near the stable wall, eyes pinned to the trees as if she expected them to speak. They mounted quickly. Ned swung into the saddle and reached down to steady Sansa as she climbed onto hers. She moved carefully, too carefully. Court-bred, still learning the rough ease of travel. Ned felt the vulnerability in every second it took. Then the trees moved. Men stepped out of darkness on either side of the lane. 5 of them, maybe 6, faces half hidden by scarves. Clubs in hands, knives glinting. One held a torch that hissed in the damp. Evening, the torchman called, voice thick with false cheer. Late ride. Tommer drew his sword, steel whispering. The other Northmen followed, spreading instinctively. Ned's hand went to his own blade. Move aside, he said, voice flat. The torchman laughed. Got coin, lordling? Heard there's a reward for. He did not finish. Arya moved first, quick as a shadow, dropping from her horse to the mud in one fluid motion, slipping behind Ned's mount. Ned's heart lurched. Then he saw what she was doing. She vanished low, using the horse's bulk as cover. One of the men lunged toward Sansa's horse, reaching for the reins. Sansa jerked back with a gasp, lantern swinging wildly. Light flared across the man's face. Young, hungry, frightened. Ned's sword came down in a hard arc, not to kill but to warn. The flat of the blade cracked against the man's wrist. He howled and stumbled back, clutching his hand. Tommer surged forward with a roar, slamming into another attacker. Steel met wood with a brutal sound. The man with the club fell, teeth flashing in the torchlight, blood and spit. The torchman swore and swung his torch like a weapon. Flame licked close to Ned's horse's eyes. The beast screamed and reared. Ned cursed, tightening his grip, forcing the animal down before it could bolt and throw him. In that heartbeat of chaos, the torchman darted towards Sansa again, knife raised. Sansa froze. Ned saw it, saw the way fear rooted her for a fraction too long. His breath caught as if the blade were already in her. Then Sansa moved, not gracefully, not like a lady. She swung the lantern with both hands, wild and desperate, and smashed it into the torchman's face. Glass shattered, oil splashed. The man screamed, stumbling back as flame caught his scarf and hair. He clawed at his head, dropping the torch into mud where it sputtered and flared. Ned's chest slammed with relief so fierce it made him dizzy. "Sansa!" he shouted. She stared at the burning man, horrified at what she'd done. Hands lifted as if they belonged to someone else. Ride.
Ned barked.
Ride now. Another attacker rushed Ned from the side, knife flashing. Ned parried, steel ringing, then drove his shoulder forward, knocking the man off balance. The attacker slipped in mud, and in that instant Arya appeared, low, fast, needle darting like a fong. She did not stab deep. She did not kill. She drove the point into the man's thigh, just enough. The man shrieked and fell, hands scrabbling. Arya's face was fierce, almost feral. "Don't touch us," she hissed. Ned dragged his horse around, blocking Sansa's path toward the attackers, forcing her to turn away. Tomard finished the fight with brutal efficiency. One man fleeing into trees, another sprawled in mud groaning, the rest backing away when they realized these were not soft prey. "Go!" Tomard roared at them, sword red dark in the moonlight. They went. Hoofs tore into mud. The lane vanished behind them. Ned rode hard, one hand gripping reins, the other reaching out to steady Sansa when her horse stumbled in panic. Her breath came in sobbing bursts, but she did not stop. She did not collapse. When the inn's lights were only faint behind them, Ned finally dared to slow. The night swallowed their pursuers, leaving only the sound of their own breathing and the wet rhythm of hooves. Sansa's voice came ragged. "I hit him," she whispered. I set him on fire." "You saved your life," Ned said, and kept his tone steady, because if he let fear into it, it would flood them all. Sansa's eyes shone in the dark. "Is that what it is now?" she whispered. "Just doing whatever it takes?" Ned looked ahead into the black, toward the river and Riverrun and war. "Sometimes," he said softly. "Yes." Arya rode on Sansa's other side, grinning like she'd tasted blood and liked it. "She was good," Arya said. "You were good." Sansa did not smile, but her hands, tight on the reins, did not shake anymore. They found the ruined sept by accident, or by the kind of grim mercy the world sometimes offered to the desperate. It sat off the track beneath leaning oaks, its roof half collapsed, stones slick with moss. Inside, the statues of the Seven stood broken, faces cracked, hands missing, gods brought low by time and weather. Ned did not like it. Ruins made good hiding places, but they also made good traps. Still, the horses were lathered. Tomard's breath wheezed. The arrow wound in his side had reopened in the fight, staining his shirt dark. The septa was near collapse. Even Arya's stubborn energy had frayed to thin, sharp threads. They brought the horses into the trees and set a watch. Ned chose the sept because it was out of sight and because there was no better option. Inside, Septa Mordain sank to her knees before the broken mother statue and began to pray with a fervor that sounded like desperation. Her voice echoed off stone, too loud. Ned wanted to hush her, but he could not bring himself to strip her of the only comfort she had left. Sansa sat on a cracked step near the doorway, staring at her hands. Dried blood marked her knuckles. Someone else's, not hers. The sight seemed to hold her in place, as if she believed if she moved, she might see it again. Arya squatted nearby, watching her sister like she was a strange animal she didn't know how to approach. Ned sat with his sword across his knees, back against cold stone. He kept his gaze on the broken doorway, on the dark shapes beyond. He listened to the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant croak of frogs, the soft murmur of Tomard's men outside. Sansa spoke without looking up. "Did that man die?" she asked.
Ned hesitated.
In truth, he did not know. Fire could kill quickly or slowly, could leave a man alive and screaming. He could still hear the sound of it in his mind. "I don't know," he admitted. Sansa's fingers curled. "If he did, is it my fault?" Arya scoffed, unable to hold back. "He tried to grab you. He deserved it." Sansa's eyes flashed toward Arya, sudden anger cutting through her numbness. That's not the point. Arya bristled. What is the point, then? Would you rather he cut your throat? Sansa flinched at the bluntness, as if Arya had slapped her. She looked back down at her hands. No, she whispered. I didn't think it would be like this. Ned watched her, feeling the ache of it. Sansa had been raised on songs that made violence clean, heroic. A knight struck, a villain fell, the world applauded. Real blood did not wash away so easily. It isn't supposed to be like this, Ned said quietly. That's the truth, but the world rarely asks what it should be. Sansa's throat tightened. I used to think the Seven watched, she said, voice thin. I used to think, if you did the right thing, you would be protected. Septa Mordane's prayer faltered at that, as if she'd been struck. Her shoulders shook, but she did not turn around. Ned chose his words carefully. The gods may watch, he said, but men act, and men are imperfect. Arya snorted. Men are stupid. Sansa's mouth twitched faintly. It wasn't a smile, not yet, but it was something that acknowledged Arya's stubborn truth. Outside, an owl called. The sound made Sansa start. She drew her cloak tighter around herself. Father, she whispered, still staring at her hands. What did you mean about Joffrey not being the rightful king? Ned felt the old weight return, heavy and unavoidable. He had been trying to shelter her from that truth, because it was a truth that could get her killed simply for knowing it. But shelter had limits, and Sansa was changing. She was no longer a child who could be distracted by promises. He is not Robert's son, Ned said finally, voice low enough that only Sansa and Arya could hear. Cersei's children are not of Baratheon blood. Arya's eyes widened, delighted by scandal. So he's a bastard. Ned's mouth tightened. He is a boy born of his mother's choices, he said sharply. Do not take pleasure in it. This is not a game. Sansa's face had gone pale. Then what was I going to be? She whispered. A queen to a lie, Ned said softly, and a hostage besides. Sansa swallowed, her eyes glossy. And you knew. I suspected, Ned said. I learned enough to be certain, and I spoke to the queen. Arya's head snapped up. Why? Ned closed his eyes briefly, feeling the sting of his own decision. Because I thought mercy might spare children, he said. I was wrong. Sansa stared at him, a storm of emotion in her face. Hurt, betrayal, fear, and something else. Understanding, dawning slow and painful. She would have killed you, Sansa whispered. Yes, Ned said. She would have killed us, Arya added fierce. Ned looked at his daughters in the flickering candlelight, both of them shaped by the same danger in different ways. That is why we ran, he said. Not because I am a coward, because I am your father. Sansa's breath shuddered out. She rubbed her bloody knuckles against her cloak until the stain smeared. Then I'll learn, she whispered, voice breaking and hardening at once. I'll learn what I have to. Ned nodded once, slow. Good, he said, because the next part will be worse. Septa Mordane's prayer rose again behind them, louder now, as if she meant to drown that truth in holy words. But the sept's broken gods stared on with empty eyes, and the candles trembled as the wind slipped through cracks in stone. They reached Riverrun at dusk, when the sky was the color of old steel and the river caught the last light like a ribbon of molten pewter. The castle rose from the water like something carved out of stubbornness. Stone walls, towers, the moat and the tumblestone and the red fork meeting like hands clasped. Ned's horse limped by the time they crossed the last stretch of road. Mud caked their boots, their cloaks, their hems. They looked like what they were. Fugitives pressed into shapes that no longer fit them. The sentries on the walls spotted them before they reached the gatehouse. Crossbows were raised. Men shouted challenges. Ned lifted a hand, palm outward, and called his name. There was a pause, a ripple of movement along the battlements. Then, like a dam breaking, The gates began to open. Chains clanked. The drawbridge groaned as it lowered. Ned felt his throat tighten with an emotion he had not allowed himself to feel since King's Landing. Relief so sharp it hurt. Catelyn appeared on the steps inside the gate like a vision made of grief and fury. She did not walk. She ran, skirts gathered in her hands, auburn hair escaping its pins. Behind her came Edmure Tully, face pale with shock, and Brynden Blackfish, his mouth set in a hard line that could have cut stone. Catelyn reached Ned and did not stop. She threw her arms around him with such force it stole his breath. For a moment, she was not Lady Stark, not a woman managing alliances and banners. She was simply a wife who had imagined her husband dead and found him alive. Ned's arms went around her, fierce and trembling. He felt her shaking against him, heard her breath hitch in a sound that might have been a sob, might have been a laugh. "You," she tried, voice breaking. "You're here. Seven save me, you're here." "I'm here," Ned whispered into her hair.
I'm sorry.
"I'm so sorry." Catelyn pulled back abruptly, hands on his face, as if needing proof. Her eyes searched his, desperate. Then her gaze snapped to Sansa and Arya. Sansa stood frozen, staring at her mother like she wasn't sure she was real. Arya leapt down from her horse before anyone could stop her and ran forward. "Mother!" Arya shouted. Catelyn's arms opened. Arya crashed into her, and Catelyn clung to her with a fierce, shaking grip. Then Catelyn reached for Sansa. Sansa hesitated. For a heartbeat, she looked like the girl who had left Winterfell, proud and distant. Then her face crumpled, and she moved forward quickly, almost stumbling, and fell into her mother's arms. Catelyn held her, pressing a kiss to her hair, murmuring broken words. "My girl, my sweet girl, you're safe, you're safe." Sansa clung back with surprising strength. Ned saw her shoulders shake and realized she was crying without sound. The way she had on the ship, the way she did now when she didn't want the world to see. Edmure stepped closer, eyes wide. "Ned," he breathed, as if the name itself was a question. We heard you were arrested. We heard nothing certain." Blackfish cut in, voice like gravel. His sharp eyes took in Ned's mud-stained clothes, the Northman's bruises, Tomard's pale face. Then his gaze fixed on Sansa and Arya, and something in his expression softened, just slightly. But it seems the lions missed their prey.
Ned exhaled.
"They tried," he said. Catelyn pulled away from Sansa, her hands still on her daughter's shoulders. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but the fury in them was bright. "What has happened?" she demanded. "Tell me everything." Ned looked at her. His wife, standing beneath Riverrun's gatehouse with their daughters alive beside her, and felt the full weight of what they had fled settle on him again. He could not put it down. Not now. Not ever. Inside the walls, the castle moved around them. Servants rushing, men-at-arms whispering, ravens cawing in distant towers. Riverrun smelled of river water and clean stone, and for the first time in days, Ned felt something like home. But home did not mean safety anymore. Not when a king in King's Landing had called him traitor and put a price on his head. Catelyn's voice softened, urgent. "Ned," she whispered, "where is Robert?" Ned met her gaze. "Dead," he said. Catelyn's mouth went tight. "And the throne?" Ned's jaw clenched. "Stolen," he said. "And if we do not move, it will stay that way." Catelyn's eyes hardened. She looked up at the walls, at the river beyond, at the men who would soon ride for them. "Then we move," she said, fierce and certain, and Ned felt the stark truth of it. He had brought war to her father's castle. Sansa stood beside Arya, both of them watching their parents with new eyes, as if the world had changed shape and they were learning how to stand inside it. The great hall of Riverrun was warmer than the ruined sept, brighter than the inn, but it held its own kind of cold. It was the cold of decisions that would spill blood. Candles burned low over a table strewn with maps, markers, and fresh reports. Men crowded around, river lords with weathered faces, knights with polished mail, household captains with ink-stained fingers. Their voices overlapped in sharp bursts. "Tywin Lannister will not wait," one man said, slamming a fist onto the table. "He'll come down the Gold Road with fire. And if he does," Blackfish snapped, pointing with a dagger's tip at the trident, "we make him pay for every step." Edmure Tully looked like a man trying to hold up a collapsing roof with bare hands. "The Riverlands are wide," he said. "We cannot guard every village, every bridge. We guard what matters," Catelyn said, voice cutting through like a blade. She stood beside Ned, one hand braced on the table, her eyes fierce. "We guard Riverrun. We guard the crossings. We guard the road north."
Ned liste ned. Absorbing. Measuring.
He had commanded men before. He had fought battles. But this was different. This war was not against a clear enemy beyond a wall. It was against rot in the heart of the realm. A raven had arrived just before the council began, sent from Winterfell bearing Robb's hand. Ned had read it twice, because each word struck him like a blow. Robb had called the banners. The North was moving. His son, still barely a man, was marching into a world that would try to kill him. Ned had folded the letter and tucked it into his cloak like a talisman. Now he spoke, and the room quieted. Even men who did not love him respected the weight of his voice. "Joffrey is not the rightful king," Ned said. "The realm has been lied to. Robert's heirs are not his blood." A murmur spread like wind through dry grass. Some faces tightened in shock, others in understanding, a few in skepticism. One Riverlord spat. "That's treason to say," he muttered. "It is treason to hide," Ned replied hard. "I have proof. The book of lineages. The king's own bastards. The truth written in their faces." Blackfish's mouth curled in grim satisfaction. "I always knew the queen's smile was too sharp." Edmure looked stricken. "Then who?" "Stannis Baratheon," Catelyn said at once. "Robert's brother."
Ned nodded.
"I have sent word to him. He will come with his claim, with his fleet, with his men. But he will not win without support. Not against the Lannisters' gold and the Reach's grain." A knight with a silver fish pinned to his cloak frowned. "And Renly?" Ned's jaw tightened. "Renly will also claim," he said, "because the truth demanded it. He has charm and friends, and the Tyrells will flock to him like bees to honey. The realm will fracture." Catelyn's eyes met Ned's. They did not need to speak aloud what both were thinking. In a fractured realm, the North would bleed first. From her bench against the wall, Sansa listened with a stillness that would have suited a statue. She had been brought in at Catelyn's insistence, not because Catelyn wished to burden her, but because Catelyn understood something Ned was only beginning to see. Sansa was no longer a child to be sheltered from the world's teeth. The teeth had already bitten her. Arya was not there. Arya had slipped away with the Blackfish's men, fascinated by weapons and horses, already trying to become someone who could fight back. Sansa stayed. Sansa learned. As the council argued over bridges and banners, over hostages and alliances, Sansa's gaze kept returning to the map where King's Landing sat like a dark stain. She listened to the names. Tywin, Jaime, Cersei, Joffrey, and each one seemed to scrape at her. When a Riverlord suggested trading something for time, another suggested offering Ned's head to spare the Riverlands. Sansa's fingers curled in her lap until her nails bit skin. She did not speak, but Ned saw her jaw set, saw the way her eyes narrowed with something like quiet fury. Blackfish turned to Ned. "We should send riders to every lord who hates the lion," he said. "Mallister, Piper, Vance. Gather them here. Show them you're alive. That alone will stiffen spines. And show them my daughters are alive too," Ned murmured, almost to himself, thinking of the hostage the Lannisters had wanted, thinking of the leverage they had lost. Catelyn's hand brushed his, brief and steady. "They will come," she said, voice low. "The Riverlands remember what the lions did in the last war. They remember burning and rape and broken men." Ned's mouth went hard. "And I remember what happened to my father and brother," he said softly, and the room seemed to grow colder. The council continued into the night, candle after candle burning down. Plans were made. Ravens were dispatched. Men were chosen to ride fast and far. And in the corner, Sansa Stark sat straight-backed in plain wool, listening to the language of war, and learning that power was not a crown. It was information. It was timing. It was the willingness to do what the other side would not hesitate to do to you. When the council finally broke, Ned rose with aching shoulders. He looked toward Sansa. She stood as if pulled by invisible strings, moving to him quietly. "Father," she said, voice soft, "if they can just call you traitor, if they can make people believe it." Ned studied her face. "Yes," he said, "they can." Sansa's eyes held his. "Then we have to make people believe something else," she whispered. Ned felt a chill that was not fear. It was recognition. "Yes," he said slowly, "we do." The raven arrived at dawn, its wings beating against the cold like an omen. The maester took the letter with careful hands, eyes darting to the seal before he broke it. Golden wax impressed with a lion. Catelyn read it first. Her face hardened with every line, color draining, then returning as fury. When she finished, she handed it to Ned without a word. Ned read it once, then again. Then he folded it slowly, as if the neat creases could contain the venom inside. "They demand Sansa," Catelyn said, voice tight. "They call it a promise, a mercy." Sansa stood nearby, still in her plain dress, hair braided simply. She watched her parents' faces like she was reading a map. Ned's voice was flat. "They offer safe conduct," he said, and the bitterness in it could have soured milk. "They swear on the king's honor." Arya, who had appeared like a ghost at the doorway, snorted. "What honor?" Catelyn's gaze cut to Arya. "This is not a jest," she said. "It is to them," Arya shot back. "They think we're stupid." Ned held up a hand, silencing them both. He looked at Sansa. "This is why we left," he said softly. "Because they would use you. Because they would break you to break me." Sansa's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "They can't have me," she said. Catelyn's eyes softened, just slightly. "No," she murmured. "They cannot." But then Sansa surprised them both. She stepped closer to the table and looked down at the lion-sealed letter as if it were a snake pinned to wood. "May I write back?" she asked. Catelyn blinked. "Write back?" Ned's gaze sharpened. "Why?" Sansa swallowed once. Because they're telling a story," she said, and her hands clenched, then relaxed. "They're telling the realm you're a traitor and that I was stolen. If we say nothing, their story is the only one people hear." Ned stared at her, seeing the girl she had been and the woman she might become layered together like two images. "And what story would you tell?" he asked quietly. Sansa's eyes lifted to meet his. There was fear there, yes, but it was contained now, harnessed. "The truth," she said, "as much of it as we can. That we left because we were in danger. That you did not abduct me. That I chose to go." Catelyn's mouth tightened. "They will call it lies." "Then let them," Sansa said, and the steadiness in her voice was new. "But if even one lord hears it and thinks twice, if even one man refuses to take their coin, it matters." Ned felt something stir in him, pride, sharp and wary. "Words can be weapons," he said. "I know," Sansa whispered. "I'm learning." Catelyn looked at Ned, a question in her eyes. Ned hesitated, then nodded once. They moved to a small solar, quieter, with a narrow window overlooking water. A raven perched nearby, head cocked, watching like a judge. Sansa sat at the table with parchment and quill. Her fingers hovered, trembling only slightly. Catelyn stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. Not pressing, not controlling, simply there. Ned stood across from the table, arms folded, watching with an expression Sansa could not quite read. Sansa dipped the quill and began. She wrote carefully, not like a lovesick girl writing to a prince, but like a Stark writing for survival. She did not accuse with wild emotion. She did not beg. She stated. She wrote that her father had served King Robert faithfully. She wrote that when danger rose in the Red Keep, he had taken his daughters to safety as any father would. She wrote that she went willingly, that she was not harmed, that she would not be traded like a coin. Then she paused, quill hovering, and looked up. Do I name the truth? She asked, voice tight. Ned's jaw clenched. Not in ink, he said. Not yet. Ravens can be caught. Sansa nodded slowly. She returned to the parchment and chose words that hinted without declaring. Words that planted doubt like seeds. When she finished, her hand ached. She set the quill down and flexed her fingers, staring at what she had written as if it might become real by force of will. Catelyn leaned down and kissed her hair. You did well, she whispered. Sansa's throat tightened. Will it matter? She asked. Ned picked up the letter and read it. His eyes lingered on certain lines, the ones that struck cleanest. He looked at Sansa then, and his voice softened in a way it rarely did in war councils. It will matter to you, he said, because it is you choosing who you are. Sansa's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. She nodded once, sharp. The maester took the letter, tied it, sealed it with plain wax. No direwolf, no fish, no identity, only words. As the raven was carried away, Sansa watched it go, her face set. Somewhere far south, lions waited with open jaws. Let them wait, she thought, and surprised herself with the fierceness of it. Let them starve. The first report of the Hound came 3 days later, carried by a rider whose horse was flecked with foam and whose eyes were too wide. Black cloak, the man said, voice hoarse. Big bastard on a black horse. Burned face. He asked questions at a village near the ford. Blackfish's mouth curled in a humorless smile. So the queen's dog is sniffing, he said. Ned stood in Riverrun's yard, half-armored, feeling the weight of mail settle on his shoulders like an old memory. He had hoped for more time. Time to gather lords, time to move families to safety, time to prepare Robb for what was coming. Time was not a thing the Lannisters gave. Catelyn's face was hard. How close? She demanded. A day, the rider said. Maybe less. Arya's eyes lit like torch flame. Good, she said, and Blackfish barked a laugh. Sansa did not speak. She stood beside her mother, hands clasped tight, listening. She could feel the shape of danger now without needing it described. It was a pressure in the air, a tightening in men's voices, a shift in the way servants moved faster. Ned looked at Blackfish. If Sandor Clegane is this close, others will follow, he said. Blackfish nodded. Gold cloaks, sellswords, Lannister men in red. They'll try to take you like a prize. And Sansa, Catelyn said, voice low. Sansa lifted her chin. They won't, she said, steady. Catelyn's gaze flicked to her, something fierce and protective in it. No, she agreed. They won't. Blackfish slapped a gauntlet hand against his saddle. Then we ride, he said. We don't wait behind walls to be strangled. Edmure protested, anxious. Riverrun must be held. It will be, Blackfish cut in, by men who stay, but we move the wolves before the trap closes. Ned felt the grim sense of it. If the Hound was sniffing near the fords, it meant the Lannisters guessed enough to try. Riverrun was strong, but strength invited siege. The Riverlands would burn while Tywin tightened his fist. Ned turned to Catelyn. Their eyes met, and in that look was everything unsaid. The fear of separation, the memory of Bran's fall, the knowledge that their children were now pieces in a war they never wanted. I will ride, Ned said quietly. Catelyn's jaw tightened, but she did not argue. She reached out and touched his arm, fingers pressing hard through mail as if to remind herself he was real. Come back, she whispered.
Ned swallowed.
I will, he promised, though promises were thin things in war. They prepared at twilight. Horses were saddled. Swords were checked. Men tightened straps and murmured to gods they did not fully trust. Ned's Northmen stood close, faces grim. Tomard's wound had been stitched. He moved stiffly but insisted on riding. "If I die," he'd said, "I'll die doing something worth it." Sansa climbed the steps to the battlements with Arya at her side. Below, in the yard, Ned swung into his saddle with practiced ease. He looked up as if feeling her gaze. For a heartbeat, father and daughter held each other's eyes across stone and distance. Sansa's throat tightened. She wanted to call out something brave, something perfect. Instead, she lifted her hand and pressed it to her chest, then extended it outward, a gesture she had seen ladies make in farewell at court. But this time it was not a performance. It was a promise of her own. Ned's expression softened, just slightly. He inclined his head once, solemn. Arya leaned over the battlement, grinning. "Bring me a sword," she shouted down. "A real one." Blackfish laughed as he rode past beneath her. "Earn it first, little wolf." Sansa did not laugh. She watched the riders form. Blackfish at their head, Ned beside him, banners fluttering in the river breeze. The sound of hooves began, a deep, steady thunder that vibrated through stone. As the gates opened and the column rode out, Sansa felt something settle inside her. Fear, yes, but also a strange, cold clarity. The world was not a song. The world was choices made quickly, paid for in blood. She turned her gaze south, toward where King's Landing lay beyond fields and rivers and smoke. Somewhere down that road, Sandor Clegane hunted with orders on his tongue and violence in his hands. Let him come, Sansa thought, and surprised herself again with the steadiness of it. Let all of them come, because she was no longer waiting to be saved in a tower. She was learning how to stand on a wall and watch the storm approach, and how to endure it when it hit. The yard emptied in slow pieces, like a body exhaling after holding its breath too long. Hooves beat a steady thunder beyond the gate until the sound thinned, then vanished, swallowed by distance and river wind. The last banner dipped out of sight. The last clink of mail faded. Riverrun returned to the smaller noises. Buckets in the well, a stable hand's cough, the creak of ropes over the moat. Yet Sansa remained on the battlement as if her gaze could hold her father in the world by force alone. Arya lingered beside her for a time, elbows on stone, hair tangling in the breeze. She looked pleased, almost, as if the sight of men riding to meet danger were a promise kept. When the cold seeped into her bones, she pushed away from the wall with a restless shrug. "I'm going to see the horses," Arya said. Sansa did not answer at first. Her throat felt too tight, her tongue too heavy. She watched the road, the strip of mud and grass that led south toward fires she could not yet see. When Arya's boots began to clatter down the steps, Sansa forced herself to speak. "Don't get yourself killed," she said, and hated how thin it sounded. Arya paused, glancing back. For an instant, her fierce mask slipped, revealing something younger. "I won't," she said, almost offended by the notion. "I'm not stupid." Then she was gone, swallowed by stone and noise and the freedom of the yard. Sansa stayed a moment longer, until her fingers went numb against the parapet. She tried to make herself breathe. In King's Landing, she had once watched knights ride out from the gates in bright mail and brighter smiles, cheered by crowds that believed the world always returned men safely home. Here there were no cheers, only the murmur of worried servants and the hard set of soldiers' mouths. The difference felt like a slap. When she finally descended, her legs were stiff, her steps measured. She found her mother in a solar that smelled of parchment and wax. Catelyn stood at the table with a cluster of letters spread before her like a wounded flock of birds. Her hair had been hastily braided. Her hands moved with quick, precise anger. "You should be resting," Catelyn said without looking up. "I can't," Sansa replied. That drew Catelyn's gaze. Her eyes were sharp, red at the edges from tears she had not allowed herself in front of men. For a heartbeat, Sansa saw not Lady Stark, but the woman who had kissed her brow in Winterfell, who had scolded her gently for daydreaming, who had never imagined sending her daughter into a world that would call her a prize. "Sit," Catelyn said, softer. Sansa sat. The chair felt too solid, as if it expected her to become a piece of furniture. She placed her hands in her lap and tried to stop them from trembling. "They'll catch him," she whispered. "The Hound. Those men. They may try," Catelyn said, and there was steel in it. "But your father rides with Brynden. He is not alone." Sansa's fingers clenched. "He shouldn't have to be riding at all. He should be here. We should be safe. We should." She broke off, ashamed of the childishness of it, of the word safe that no longer meant anything. Catelyn crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, taking Sansa's hands in both of hers. Her palms were cool, calloused at the base from years of managing a household that did not give softness easily. "Listen to me," Catelyn said. "We are not helpless. Not here." Sansa looked down at their joined hands. "I feel helpless." "So did I," Catelyn admitted quietly. "When I thought your father was dead. When I thought you were dead. The feeling does not mean the truth. It means you are alive enough to be afraid." Sansa swallowed. Fear felt like water in her lungs. "What do I do with it?" Catelyn's gaze held hers. "You use it," she said. "You let it sharpen you, not drown you." Sansa's mouth tightened. "How?" Catelyn rose, still holding her hands, and turned Sansa toward the table. Letters lay there with seals broken, fish, hounds, trees, a few plain blobs of wax from lesser houses. Catelyn's fingers tapped one parchment, then another. "Men are writing," she said. "Lords are weighing their chances. Some will come to us. Some will sit and wait. Some will look south and think they can buy safety by bending." Sansa's stomach turned. "Because the crown says father is a traitor." "Yes," Catelyn said, and anger flashed. "Because the crown will pay for gossip with gold. Because the crown will burn what it must to make the rest kneel." Sansa stared at the letters. The words swam. She had thought of war as swords and banners. She had not understood it began here in ink and whispers. Catelyn squeezed her hands. "You asked to write," she said. "You were right to ask. And if you want to help, you can. There are things you know that I do not. The way men in courts hear flattery. The way pride can be stroked until it becomes a leash." Sansa's cheeks warmed. Pride and shame tangled together. "I don't want to be like them," she whispered. Catelyn's eyes softened, fierce and gentle at once. "You do not have to become cruel to become capable," she said. "But you must become useful. For yourself. For Arya. For your brothers. For your father. Useful." The word sat in Sansa's chest like a stone, heavy and grounding. She drew a breath, steadier this time. "Then tell me what to do," she said. Catelyn nodded once, approving. "We start with names," she said, and pulled a letter closer. "And with the men who like to be reminded of what they think they deserve." Sansa leaned over the parchment. The wax seal bore twin towers. She recognized it from lessons that had once seemed tedious. Housefry. The twins. The crossing. A cold clarity spread through her. The road north was not only mud and blood. It was pride, greed, grudges old enough to have gray in their beards. If she could speak that language, if she could make it work for her, then she was not only a girl who had escaped a cage. She was a street. Arc with teeth. The Fry letter lay unopened on the table for only a heartbeat before Edmure arrived, breathless, and the moment splintered. He carried another parchment in his fist, crumpled from being gripped too hard. "Scouts from the west," Edmure blurted. "They say Lannister outriders have been seen near Fairmarket. And there's talk of a proclamation nailed in villages. Your husband's name on it, Catelyn." Catelyn's mouth went hard, as if they could stain him with ink. Edmure paced, hands flinging helplessly. "People are frightened. They hear traitor and they think the gods have already chosen. They think if they give the lion what it wants, the lion will stop eating." Sansa watched him with a strange detachment. Once she would have been startled to see a lord so openly panicked. Now she thought, this is what fear does when it does not have a shape to strike. It becomes noise. Catelyn held out her hand. "Give it here," she said. Edmure thrust the parchment at her. Sansa leaned in as Catelyn read. The words were stiff with false righteousness, claiming King Joffrey's mercy, urging loyal subjects to assist in the capture of Eddard Stark the traitor and any who sheltered him. Rewards listed in neat lines. Pardon promised with oily generosity. "They promise forgiveness," Sansa murmured. "They promise obedience," Catelyn corrected. She slammed the parchment down. "Forgiveness implies you did wrong," Edmure swallowed. "But it will work. On some. Men like being told they can buy their way out of fear." Sansa thought of the inn, of men leaning closer when coin was mentioned, of their laughter sharpening into interest. "Yes," she said quietly. "It will work." Catelyn looked at her. "You have an idea." Sansa surprised herself by nodding. The idea had been forming since the council, since she had realized that silence was surrender. "If they are shouting," she said, "we must speak too. Not to the whole realm at once. To the ones who matter." Edmure frowned. "With what? We have no singers. No crailles." "With ravens," Sansa replied. "With letters. With the right words." Catelyn's eyes narrowed, thoughtful. "What words?" Sansa hesitated only a moment. She could feel the old instinct to please, to say what others wanted to hear. She pushed it aside and spoke what she believed. "Words that make it easier for them to stand with us than against us," she said. "Words that remind them what the Lannisters are, what they do. Words that give them a story that doesn't end with them burning." Edmure's face twisted. "Stories won't stop swords." "No," Sansa agreed. "But stories decide whose swords are drawn." Catelyn watched her as if seeing her anew. "All right," she said. "Show me." They spread letters across the table. Names rose like a map. Mallister at Seaguard, Piper at Pinkmaiden, Vance at Wayfarer's Rest, Bracken and Blackwood glaring at one another even on parchment, Darry with old loyalties and old wounds. Sansa's head filled with sigils and reputations, with the knowledge she had once dismissed as ornament. Catelyn set parchment and ink before her. "Write to Lord Mallister," she said. "He is proud. He is cautious. He hates the Ironborn more than he fears lions. Give him something he can stand on." Sansa took the quill. It felt different now, less like a tool for copying Septa's lessons, more like a blade with a sharp point and a quiet edge. She began with courtesy, because courtesy was a door you opened before you asked a man to step into danger. She wrote of his honor, his vigilance at Seaguard, the strength of his walls and the stubbornness of his line. She wrote of the crown's lies without calling him a fool for ever believing them. She wrote of King Robert's friendship with Eddard Stark, of a father's duty to protect his children. She wrote of the Lannisters' hunger, their history of taking and not giving back. Then she did something she had never done before in a letter meant for a lord. She offered him a choice that did not insult him. "Stand with us," she wrote, "and you stand with law, with truth, with a realm not ruled by a boy's tantrums and a queen's poison. Stand aside, and the lion will still come for your fields when it has eaten the next man. Stand against us, and you will have bought a day of false peace with a lifetime of shame." When she finished, her hand ached. She read it twice, hearing the cadence. It sounded like her, and it sounded like her mother, and it sounded like the North all at once. Catelyn took the parchment and read. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You did not beg," she said.
"No," Sansa replied.
Her voice was steady. "I asked." Edmure leaned in, scanning. He looked startled, then grudgingly impressed. "That will sting," he muttered. "In a good way." Catelyn nodded and pressed her seal into wax. Not the direwolf, not the trout, but plain wax again. The less the raven carried, the less could be twisted if it was caught. As the maester prepared the bird, Sansa watched the raven's black eyes and felt something settle in her bones. King's Landing had taught her how easily words could become cages. Riverrun was teaching her how words could become keys. Outside, the river moved on, uncaring. Men would still bleed. Villages would still burn. But somewhere, on some distant wall, a lord would break wax. read a girl's careful ink, and decide whether to stand. Sansa had never held a sword. She might never, but she could do this, and it mattered. The spy came in with mud on his boots and fear in his eyes, dragged by two men who did not bother to be gentle. He was young, no older than Robb, with a narrow face and hands that shook as if his bones were loose inside him. A stable boy, someone said. A serving boy, someone else corrected. One of the ones who moved unseen through castles because no one looked at him long enough to remember his face. Now everyone looked. They hauled him into a small room off the hall, lit by a single candle that made the corners feel hungry. Catelyn stood with her arms folded, expression carved out of anger. Edmure hovered behind her, pale and sweating as if this were a battle he did not know how to fight. Ser Desmond Grell and a pair of guards waited at the door. The air smelled of damp stone and panic. Sansa slipped in quietly, staying near the wall. She had not been invited, but no one stopped her. She watched the boy's eyes dart, watched his throat work as he swallowed too often. "What is your name?" Catelyn asked. The boy's lips parted, but no sound came. One of the guards shoved him forward. He stumbled, catching himself on the table. "Name," the guard growled. "Pate," the boy whispered. "My lady, Pate." Catelyn's voice was cold. "Pate, do you know why you are here?" Pate's eyes flicked toward the door as if he might still run. "No, my lady." Edmure stepped forward, flustered. "We found a note in the stable loft," he blurted, as if the words burned him. "Tied under a beam, and coins. Lannister coins." Pate's face went gray. "I didn't." "Don't lie," Catelyn snapped. "Lies are a luxury. Tell me who paid you." Pate began to shake in earnest now. "I don't know. A man with a scar on his chin. He said if I left the stable gate unlatched on the riverside, no one would be hurt. He lied." Arya's voice cut in. She stood in the doorway, eyes bright and vicious, a training sword in her hand like it itched to become real. "They always lie." Catelyn shot her a sharp look. "Arya, out." Arya did not move. "He's a traitor," she said. "Hang him." Pate made a strangled sound. Please, I didn't mean." Sansa's stomach twisted. She thought of the Inn men, of their hunger for reward. She thought of the torchman screaming as oil caught. She thought of how fear turned people into tools. She stepped forward before she could lose her nerve. "Why did you believe him?" she asked Pate. Everyone turned toward her. Catelyn's gaze sharpened, but she did not stop her. Edmure blinked, surprised. Arya looked annoyed. Pate's eyes fixed on Sansa like she was a mercy he had not expected. Because he said he'd pay," Pate whispered. "And my mum's sick, and the maester wants coin for herbs. And," his voice cracked, "I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think it would hurt anyone." Sansa nodded slowly, not in agreement, in understanding. "It mattered," she said softly, "because someone wanted to come through that gate." Pate's breath hitched. "He said just men to look," he babbled. "Just men to see if the wolf was here. He said he'd take the wolf and the rest would be safe." Catelyn's eyes went dark. "Which wolf?" Pate swallowed. "Lord Stark," he whispered. "And the red-haired girl." Sansa felt her skin go cold. The red-haired girl. As if she were not a person, only a description for a prize. Arya's fingers tightened on her wooden sword. "I told you," she snarled to no one. "I told you they'd come." Catelyn's voice was iron. "Who told you to unlatch the gate tonight?" Pate shook his head frantically. "He didn't say tonight. He just said soon. He said the burned man was close." "The burned man," Edmure repeated, confused. Sansa's heart thudded once. "The Hound," she said quietly, and the room seemed to tighten. Catelyn's gaze flicked to her. "What did he say?" she demanded. Pate's eyes rolled with terror. "He said the Hound was hunting, that the Queen wanted what was hers, that..." He broke into sobs. "Please, my lady, I didn't think." Catelyn stepped closer. Where was this man meant to meet you again? Pate's sobs hiccuped. By the old willow, he whispered. Outside the river wall where the bank dips. He said to leave a ribbon there so he'd know. Sansa's mind raced. A ribbon. A signal. In King's Landing, she had seen women pass messages with lace and flowers, small and sweet-looking things that carried poison. Here it was the same, only dirtier. Catelyn straightened. Desmond, she said to the captain. Post men at the old willow, quiet men, and shut the river gate. Bar it. If someone comes, take him alive if you can. Arya's grin was sharp. Can I come? No, Catelyn snapped, then glanced at Sansa as if remembering herself. She lowered her voice slightly. You will both stay in the keep, with guards. Understood. Arya scowled. Sansa nodded. The fear in her belly had become something else, an awareness of how close they had been to being snatched from behind stone walls. Edmure looked at Pate with helpless disgust. What do we do with him? He asked. Catelyn's expression did not soften. Lock him up, she said. He will answer for what he has done when we have time to decide what justice looks like in a world that is burning. Pate sagged as if the word lock were a relief compared to the word hang. He wept silently as he was dragged away. When the door shut, silence fell, heavy and cold. Arya spat. If father were here, he'd forgive him, she said bitterly. And then the boy would do it again. Sansa looked at her sister. Father would understand, she said quietly. That's not the same as forgiving. Arya glared at her. You're starting to sound like mother. Sansa felt a strange flicker of pride at that, and a deeper sadness. She had once wanted to sound like the queen. Now she wanted to sound like the women who kept people alive. Catelyn took a long breath, then turned to Sansa. You did well, she said, and there was no softness in eye. Only respect. Sansa swallowed. I was afraid, she admitted. So am I, Catelyn replied. But fear that speaks can be answered. Fear that stays silent kills in the dark. Outside, the river murmured, and somewhere beyond Riverrun's walls, men with scars and coin and promises moved toward the old willow with hunger in their hands. The smell reached them before the smoke did. Ned felt it in the back of his throat as they rode. Burned wood, wet ash, something sour beneath it that his mind tried not to name. Blackfish rode ahead with scouts fanned out like fingers, his posture rigid, as if he could smell the land the way a hound did. Tomard kept close at Ned's flank, face pale but determined, jaw clenched against pain. They crested a low rise, and the village lay below like a wound. Roofs had collapsed into black ribs. Fence posts stood charred and crooked. A cart lay on its side in the mud, its wheel half-burned, like a broken limb. Ned's horse snorted, skittish. He slid down from the saddle and walked forward slowly, boots sinking into wet earth. The air tasted of smoke even though the fire had died. It lingered in everything, like a curse. A woman sat near what had been her door, rocking back and forth with a child limp in her lap. Her hair was singed. Her face was streaked with soot and tears. She did not look up when the riders approached. She did not seem to see them at all.
Blackfish dismounted beside Ned.
His mouth was a hard line. Lions, he said, voice flat, or men wearing lion colors. Ned's chest tightened. Why here? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Because it was easy. Because fear was a tool, and a burned village was a message pinned to the land. A boy, alive, somehow staggered out from behind a broken wall. His eyes were too big in his soot-streaked face. He stared at the men in mail, then at Ned's wolf-emblazoned cloak, and something like hope flickered. They took him, the boy croaked. They took my dad. Ned crouched, careful not to loom. Who did? He asked gently. Men, the boy said, as if that were explanation enough. Men in red, they said. They said the wolf was a traitor. They said we'd be spared if we told them where you were. Ned's jaw tightened. And did you tell them? The boy shook his head violently. We didn't know, he whispered. We didn't know. They burned anyway. Blackfish's eyes flashed with fury. Tywin's work, he muttered. Old habits. Ned stood, the movement stiff. He looked over the village again, feeling a weight settle on him. This was what war meant before banners met in open fields. It meant villages that could not fight being punished for not kneeling quickly enough. It meant children learning that mercy was a lie. He turned to one of the riders. "Find any survivors," he ordered. "Give them food, water. Get them toward Riverrun if they can walk." The man hesitated, glancing at Blackfish as if asking whose authority mattered. Blackfish gave a sharp nod. "Do it." Ned stepped toward the woman with the child. He knelt beside her, gentle. "My lady," he said softly, though she was not a lady and he knew it.
I'm sorry.
Her eyes lifted slowly. They were empty, and in that emptiness Ned saw a reflection of King's Landing's cruelty. "Sorry?" she rasped. Her voice was cracked, raw. "Will sorry bring him back?"
Ned swallowed.
"No," he admitted. She laughed once, a sound that had no humor in it. "Then take your sorry and feed it to the crows," she whispered, and turned away again, rocking. Ned rose, his stomach knotted. He felt Blackfish's gaze on him like a challenge. "This is what happens when you warn queens," Blackfish said quietly, not cruelly, but with the bluntness of a man who had stopped dressing truth in lace. "You gave them time. Now they make their point with fire." Ned's throat tightened. "I know," he said. "I will carry that." Blackfish snorted. "Carry it, then use it. Guilt is heavy. Make it useful." A scout rode in from the east, horse splattered with mud. "Riders," he reported. 3, maybe 4, on the road. Red cloaks. Blackfish's head snapped up. "Distance. Half a league," the scout said. "They're moving slow, like they're not afraid of being seen." "Because they want to be seen," Blackfish muttered. He looked at Ned. "This is bait." Ned's eyes went to the boy again, to the woman, to the blackened timbers. If they rode away, those riders would keep burning. If they fought, they risked being delayed, caught by something larger. He made a decision that tasted like iron. "We don't take the bait," he said, "but we don't leave them unchallenged." Blackfish's mouth curved slightly. "Now you sound like a man at war," he said. They moved quickly then, riders spreading, slipping into the tree line along the road. Ned took position behind a fallen log, sword drawn, breath controlled. He watched the road through wet leaves. The riders appeared, 3 men on horses, red cloaks damp with mist, spears upright. They rode as if they owned the land, eyes lazy. When they reached the bend where the trees thickened, Blackfish whistled sharply. Arrows flew. 2 riders fell in a heartbeat. One with a shaft in his throat, the other pitching off his horse with a grunt as steel found his shoulder. The third yanked his reins hard, shouting, trying to turn. Ned surged from cover, boots slipping in mud, and swung his sword low. The blade struck the horse's leg, not killing but crippling. The animal screamed and went down. The rider hit the ground hard, rolling, scrambling for his spear. Ned's sword tip hovered at the man's throat. "Who sent you?"
Ned demanded.
The man's eyes were wide, fear sharp now, not lazy. "The lion," he croaked. "Lord Tywin," he said. He said burn and ask and burn again. Ned's jaw clenched. "Ask what?" "Where you are," the man whispered. "Where the girl is." "Where?" Ned's stomach turned. He pressed the sword closer, just enough to make the man stop speaking. "Tell Lord Tywin," Ned said, voice low and deadly, "that wolves remember." Blackfish stepped in and struck the man across the temple with the butt of his dagger. The rider went limp. "We take him," Blackfish said. "A message is better when it has a mouth." Ned looked back toward the village, smoke still clinging to the air. He felt the weight of each dead body like a stone in his pockets. He thought of Sansa's steady voice over parchment. He thought of Arya's sharp grin with a training sword. He thought of Catelyn's fierce eyes. He swung into his saddle again, turning his horse away from the ruin. "We ride," he said. And behind them, the burned village sat silent beneath a gray sky, a warning written in ash that Ned Stark could no longer afford to misread. Night turned the Riverlands into a different country. The roads vanished into blackness. The trees became crouching figures. Every sound carried farther than it should. Ned's party made camp in a low hollow between two ridges, where the wind was cut and the fire could be kept small. They did not light it at first. They ate cold bread and salted fish in silence, listening to the world. Only when the scouts returned with no sign of riders did Blackfish allow a faint flame, shielded by stones. It glowed like an ember of defiance. Tomard sat with his back against a stump, shirt loosened at the side where the old wound seeped again. The Maester Blackfish had brought along thin, sour-faced practical, stitched him by firelight. Tomard did not flinch. He stared into the dark as if daring it to come closer. Blackfish squatted opposite Ned, chewing on a strip of dried meat. "You should sleep," he said. Ned's eyes stayed on the ridgeline. "So should you," Blackfish grunted. "I've slept enough in my life. I'll sleep when I'm dead." Ned almost smiled, but the weight in his chest would not allow it. He kept seeing the village, the woman's empty eyes. He kept hearing the rider's croaked words. "Where the girl is." "They're hunting Sansa," he said quietly. Blackfish's gaze sharpened. "Aye, that's the point. They want you to choose between being a lord and being a father." Ned's jaw clenched. "I won't choose," Blackfish snorted. "Everyone chooses, even if they pretend they didn't." Ned's mouth went hard. "Then I choose my children." Blackfish studied him for a moment, then nodded once, as if that answer met some private measure. "Good," he said. "Then we plan like a man who knows what he's protecting." A rustle came from the edge of camp. A scout emerged, breath visible in the cold. "Raven," he said, holding out a small cylinder of parchment. Ned's heart thudded. He took it with stiff fingers and broke the thread. The seal was plain. No wax, only a pressed knot. The writing inside was Rob's hand, rushed but legible. "Father, the banners are called." Great John Umber roared so loud the hall shook. "Roose Bolton has come with men. Lord Karstark rides. The Manderleys send word they will muster at White Harbor. I have sent ravens to the twins. We march to Moat Cailin within the week. Tell me where to meet you. Tell me you are safe." Ned read it twice, feeling the words like a hand on his shoulder. Rob was moving. Rob was taking the weight Ned had once carried alone. Blackfish watched his face. "Good news?" he asked. "Rob," Ned said, voice thick. "He's called the Banners." Blackfish's grin was thin and fierce. "The North moves," he said. "That'll make men listen." Ned folded the parchment carefully, tucking it inside his cloak as if it were a piece of his son's heartbeat. "He asks where to meet," Ned said. Blackfish leaned over the map scratched into mud with a stick. "The twins," he said at once. "We need the crossing. If Rob comes south, he'll want it. If Tywin comes north, he'll want it. Walder Frey sits like a spider over that bridge." Ned thought of the letter on Catelyn's table. "Catelyn is writing," he murmured. "Sansa is writing." Blackfish arched an eyebrow. "Your daughter."
Ned nodded.
"She understands court words." Blackfish huffed. "A weapon's a weapon. Let her sharpen it." The fire crackled softly. Beyond its circle, the night pressed close. Ned could feel the world turning, gears grinding as banners rose and men chose sides. Another scout returned, bringing the prisoner, Tywin's rider, bound and gagged. His eyes were wide, white-ringed with fear. Blackfish looked at him with a predator's calm. "We'll let him run in the morning," Blackfish said, "with a tail in his mouth. We'll make Tywin wonder which road we're taking." Ned studied the prisoner's face and felt nothing like triumph, only a grim necessity. "Don't kill him," he said. "Not if you can avoid it." Blackfish's eyes glinted. "Still carrying your guilt," he murmured. Ned's mouth tightened. "I carry what I must." Blackfish leaned closer, voice low enough that only Ned could hear. "Then carry this too," he said. Tywin will burn 100 villages to get one girl. He will break every law and call it order. If you hesitate because you want to be clean, he will drown you in filth. Ned met his gaze, the fire reflecting in both their eyes. I won't hesitate, he said. Blackfish nodded, satisfied, and leaned back. Sleep did not come easily. When Ned finally lay down, cloak pulled around him. The ground was hard beneath his shoulder. He stared up at a strip of sky between branches, where a few stars blinked like cold eyes. He thought of Sansa, writing with aching fingers. He thought of Arya, training with a wooden sword, dreaming of steel. He thought of Catelyn, holding Riverrun together like stitching on a wound. He thought of Robb calling men to march, and he thought of the Red Keep, where a boy wore a crown too heavy for his head and a queen smiled with knives behind her teeth. When Ned finally drifted into sleep, it was not peaceful. It was the sleep of a man who knew dawn would bring more choices, and that every choice would cost. Walder Frey's pride was a thing you could smell even through parchment. It clung to every report that reached Riverrun. The old lord's endless brood, his petty grudges, the way he counted favors like a miser counts coins. He was not loved, but he was endured, because the twins sat on stone pillars over the Green Fork and made the river a gate you had to pay to pass. Catelyn read the first response from the twins with her mouth set hard. He wants hostages, she said. He wants marriages. He wants to be treated like a king on his bridge. Edmure swore. Let him choke, he muttered. We'll find another crossing. There is no other crossing that will hold an army, Blackfish said flatly, though he was not in the room. His voice carried from the hall where he argued with captains. Not quickly, not without losing men and time. Time. The word hung heavy. Every day was a day Tywin's riders could burn. A day the Hound could sniff closer. A day the crown could tighten its story around the realm's throat. Sansa sat at the solar table with ink-stained fingers. She listened to Catelyn and Edmure argue, to the maester's cautious interjections. She watched her mother's expression. How it hardened when she spoke of Walder, how she tried to keep fury from becoming reckless. When there was a pause, Sansa spoke quietly. Let me write to him. Edmure looked at her as if she had offered to ride alone into Tywin's camp. Write to Lord Frey, he sputtered. He's a snake. He's a man, Sansa said, and the calmness of it startled even her. And men like him want to feel important. If we make him feel important, he will open his gate. Catelyn's gaze fixed on Sansa. There was something wary in it, wary but not dismissive. What would you say? Catelyn asked. Sansa drew a breath, feeling again the old court lessons that had once seemed like embroidery. Now she saw the stitches held fabric together. I would praise him, she said, not like a fool, like a girl who understands what he wants to hear. She swallowed. I would remind him that the realm is changing, that those who choose the winning side will be remembered, that he has the chance to stand as the pillar that holds the North and Riverlands together. Edmure scowled. He doesn't care about holding anything together. No, Sansa agreed. He cares about being seen as the one who mattered. Catelyn was silent for a moment. Then she nodded once. All right, she said. Right. Sansa's hand trembled when she took the quill, not from fear of ink, but from the weight of what those words might decide. She began with all the courtesy she had ever been taught and more besides. Lord Walder Frey, she wrote, Lord of the Crossing, whose towers guard the Green Fork like a crown guards a king's brow. She wrote of his long life, his many sons and daughters, his strength in having built a house so wide it could not be ignored. She wrote of the river as a blade and of the twins as the hand that held it. She did not insult him by pretending affection. She offered him respect because respect was what he craved. She offered him importance because importance was what he feared losing. Then she wrote what mattered, that Eddard Stark lived, that he had fled not from guilt but from danger, that the crown's proclamations were lies hammered into the realm for convenience. She hinted at the fracture between Baratheon brothers without naming it, hinting at storms coming that would wash away small houses and leave only those who had built on stone. "You have built on stone," she wrote. "Let the crossing be remembered as the place where the North and Riverlands stood together against false kings and burning lions. Let your name be spoken not with sneers but with gratitude." And then, carefully, she offered him what he truly wanted: connection to the powerful. "My brother Robb Stark marches with the North," she wrote. "He will not forget those who help him reach the South. My father Eddard Stark will not forget. My mother Catelyn Stark, born of Riverrun, will not forget. There will be marriages in the new order of things, honors to be given, seats at councils, sons raised high." She wrote the last part like poison and honey, because that was what Walder Frey would taste. When she finished, she read it aloud to Catelyn, voice steady. Catelyn listened without interrupting. Her expression changed slowly, as if watching a door open that she had assumed was locked. "That might work," Catelyn said finally. Edmure scoffed, but the scoff was uneasy. "He'll still demand more." "Probably," Sansa said. "So we give him what costs us least and means most to him." Catelyn studied her. "You understand him," she said softly. Sansa's mouth tightened. "I understand men who want to be courted," she replied, and there was bitterness in it that spoke of princes and promises. "I spent enough time in King's Landing." Catelyn reached across the table and covered Sansa's ink-stained hand with her own. "You did not waste that time," she said. "Not if it keeps us alive now." The maester sealed the letter and carried it away. As the raven was brought, Sansa watched its glossy feathers and wondered where it would fly over burning villages and frightened fields. She imagined it landing on Walder Frey's table, imagined his old, sharp eyes scanning her careful flattery. "Open the gate," she thought, not as a plea but as a command made of ink. "Open it, because if you don't, the river will swallow us all." Outside, Riverrun's courtyards filled with men sharpening blades. Arya's laughter rang as she sparred with a guard twice her size and tried to trip him. The castle felt like it held its breath, waiting for a raven to return with a decision that might decide whether the North marched through a bridge or into a grave. The reeds along the ford whispered as the riders approached, bowing under the weight of morning dew. Ned's horse stepped carefully, hooves sinking into wet ground. Blackfish had chosen this place because it was narrow, because the river here could not be crossed in a wide sweep by mounted men without slowing. Slow men could be killed. Slowed men could be misled. Ned's eyes tracked the water and the tree line, the curve of the bank. Every bend was a place for arrows. Every shadow might hide a spear. They had sent scouts ahead at first light. The scouts returned with faces tight. "He's close," one said. "The burned man." Blackfish spat into the grass. "Good," he muttered, as if the feeling of a noose tightening were something to be welcomed because it forced action. Ned felt his pulse steady into a cold rhythm. "How many?" he asked. "Hard to say," the scout replied. "Maybe 10, maybe more. They're not marching like an army. They're moving like hunters. Quiet, fast." "And the Hound?" Ned asked. The scout's eyes flicked. "He rides at the front," he said, "like he owns the road." Blackfish's grin was thin. "He's not stupid," he said. "That one." Ned did not answer. He remembered the black horse at the dock, the burned face in torchlight. Sandor Clegane was a weapon that did not pretend to be anything else. They positioned men along the bank, hidden among willows, bows ready, horses held back in the trees. The plan was not to fight a full battle. The plan was to sting, confuse, vanish. Make the Hound chase shadows while the real prey slipped away. Ned crouched behind a fallen trunk, damp bark against his glove. Tomard lay nearby, bow in hand despite the stiffness in his side. "I can still shoot," he'd insisted, teeth bared. Ned had not argued. Pride could keep a man moving when pain would otherwise stop him. The sound came first. Hooves muffled by wet earth, a low murmur of voices. Then the riders emerged through the reeds like red stains on green. Cloaks, spears, helms. Not gold cloaks. These were harder men, with the look of those who had been paid to do ugly work without complaint. At their head rode Sandor Clegane. He was larger than any man had a right to be, shoulders hunched as if the world were too small for him. His cloak was dark, not red, and his helm hung from his saddle, leaving his scarred face bare to the gray morning. His eyes were flat and bright like wet stone. He stopped at the ford, horse-stamping. He looked at the water as if measuring it like an enemy. Then he lifted his head and stared at the banks, slow, searching. Ned held his breath. For a moment it felt as though Sandor's gaze might snag on his hiding place and pull him out like a hooked fish. But Sandor's mouth curled, faint and ugly, as if he smelled something amusing. He turned his head slightly and spoke to the man beside him. Quiet words Ned could not hear. Then Sandor raised a fist. The riders behind him began to spread, moving with practiced caution. One dismounted and tested the water with a spear. Another scanned the tree line. They were not charging blindly. They were expecting a trap. Blackfish, hidden farther down the bank, whistled softly, a signal to hold. Ned's muscles burned with the restraint of it. Every instinct screamed to strike first, but striking first without advantage was how men died. A rider moved toward the willow cluster where Blackfish's men hid. He stepped carefully, spear out, eyes narrowed. He was too close. Another few paces and he would see the bowstring, the waiting eyes. Ned's hand tightened on his sword hilt. He met Tomard's gaze. Tomard's mouth was a grim line. Then the rider paused, his head tilted. He frowned at something in the mud. An old hoofprint, perhaps too fresh, too deep. He crouched, touching it with his fingers. Ned felt a cold drop of certainty. They were being read. Their hiding was not as perfect as they had hoped. The rider straightened abruptly and shouted. "Here!" Everything exploded. Arrows hissed from the willows. 2 men fell. Sandor's horse reared, screaming. But Sandor held it like a man holding rage on a chain. He did not flinch. He simply bellowed, a sound like iron scraping stone, and spurred forward into the ford. Water splashed high, cold and brown. The riders surged after him. Spears lowered. Steel flashed. Blackfish's men sprang from cover, loosing again, then retreating as planned. But the Hound was faster than planned. He drove straight toward the archers with brutal focus, cutting the distance with terrifying speed. "Fall back!" Blackfish roared. Men scrambled.
One tripped in wet rage.
Sandor was on him in a heartbeat, sword out. A heavy cleaver of steel that did not sing, only threatened. He brought it down. The man screamed and rolled away, the blade biting into mud where his leg had been a moment before. Ned surged up from behind his trunk without thinking. He ran toward the struggle, heart hammering, sword raised. He saw Sandor turn, eyes catching him. For a single heartbeat, they faced each other across churned water and broken reeds. Sandor's expression did not change.
No surprise.
No fear, only recognition, like a hound scenting the very wolf it had been bred to hunt. Ned's mouth went dry. He lifted his sword higher, ready to meet the blow. Blackfish slammed into Ned's side, shoving him hard. "Not here," Blackfish snarled. "Not like this." Ned stumbled back, anger flaring. "He'll cut them down. He'll cut you down," Blackfish snapped. "And then he'll take your head to the queen wrapped in your daughter's hair. Move!" The words cut through Ned's fury like cold water. He looked again, saw Sandor's men closing, saw how quickly the skirmish was becoming a fight they could not win without losing everything. Blackfish whistled again, sharp, urgent. Their horses burst from the trees, driven by handlers. Men leapt into saddles. The retreat became a scramble. Ned mounted, muscles tight, and turned his horse away from the ford with a sick twist in his gut. Behind him, Sandor shouted orders, his voice carrying like a curse. They rode through reeds and mud, branches snapping at cloaks. Arrows followed, thudding into tree trunks, hissing past ears. Tomard cursed as one grazed his arm. Another man cried out as a shaft bit into his shoulder. They did not stop. They did not look back. They fled not from fear, but from the cold knowledge that if they stayed one moment longer, the Hound would catch them. Only when the trees thickened and the river's sound faded did Blackfish pull up, breathing hard. He turned in the saddle, scanning behind. Ned's hands shook on the reins, not with terror, but with rage. He could still see Sandor's eyes, flat and hungry. Blackfish spat. "Now he thinks he's close," he said. "Good." Ned glared at him. "Good." Blackfish's grin was sharp. Because when a hunter thinks he's close, he follows. And when he follows, he can be led. Ned looked south, where the river wound like a blade. Somewhere back there, men in red were shouting, and Sandor Clegane was pointing, scenting, promising himself the prize. Ned drew a slow breath until his shaking steadied. "Then we lead him," he said, voice low. "Far away from Riverrun." Blackfish nodded. "Now you're learning," he said, and in Ned's chest, the cold rhythm of war beat on. The envoy arrived under a flag of truce, which was as thin a protection as paper in a storm. He rode into Riverrun's courtyard with 2 guards behind him, their cloaks red, their hands never far from their sword hilts. The envoy himself wore no armor, only fine wool and a chain of office that gleamed like a leash. He bowed low to Edmure, then to Catelyn, then allowed his gaze to slide toward Sansa. Sansa felt it like a touch, not a lewd one, a calculating one weighing her value the way a merchant weighs meat. "My lady," the envoy said smoothly, "it warms the Queen's heart to know you are safe." Catelyn's voice was cold. If the Queen's heart warms so easily, perhaps she should be kept from fires. The envoy's smile twitched. He recovered quickly. "Her Grace grieves for the realm," he said, as if grief were a crown jewel. "She seeks peace. She seeks unity. She seeks to correct misunderstandings that have regrettably spread." Sansa watched him closely. In King's Landing she had seen men speak like this, wrapping threats in velvet. The cadence was familiar, the pauses, the careful way he avoided certain words, the way his eyes flicked toward guards when he spoke of peace, as if reminding everyone what peace truly meant. "What misunderstanding?" Edmure demanded, already flushed. The envoy lifted his hands, palms outward. "Lord Eddard has been misled," he said. "Perhaps by false counselors, perhaps by grief, perhaps by madness brought on by the king's death. His flight has caused alarm. His refusal to submit to the lawful king has forced the crown to act." Sansa felt her nails bite into her palms. Lawful king. She thought of Joffrey's snarling mouth, of the way his eyes had glittered when he hurt someone smaller than him. Catelyn's gaze was fixed on the envoy like a blade's edge. "And what does the crown offer?" she asked. The envoy's smile broadened. "Mercy," he said. "If Lord Eddard returns at once to King's Landing, lays down his arms, and confesses his treason, the king may be moved to spare his life. A swift pardon, a swift reunion, and as proof of good faith." His eyes slid again toward Sansa. Sansa held his gaze without flinching, though her stomach churned. "The Lady Sansa Stark may return to court," the envoy finished smoothly, "to reclaim her place beside King Joffrey. The betrothal remains, if she desires it. The realm would rejoice." For a heartbeat, the courtyard seemed to freeze. Even the horses went still. Sansa heard the distant splash of the river, the creak of a pulley, the soft mutter of guards. Edmure made a strangled sound of outrage. Arya, standing beside Sansa, growled like a trapped animal. Catelyn's face did not move, but something in her eyes sharpened to a killing point. "Get out," she said softly. The envoy blinked, smile faltering. "My lady, out," Catelyn repeated louder. "Before my uncle forgets what a truce flag means and feeds you to the fish." The envoy's cheeks reddened. He straightened, drawing himself up as if insult were a shield. "You will regret this," he said, voice tight. "The Queen's mercy will not last forever." Catelyn stepped closer until only inches separated them. Her voice was quiet, and in that quiet there was something that made even the envoy's guards shift uneasily. "The Queen's mercy is a lie," Catelyn said. Tell her that. Tell her she will not have my daughter. Tell her the Riverlands have not forgotten what lions do when they are hungry. The envoy swallowed. He bowed stiffly and turned, stalking back toward his horse. His guards followed, eyes wary, hands tense. They rode out under the lifted portcullis with their pride bruised and their message rejected. Only when they were gone did the courtyard breathe again. Arya spat on the ground. I hope his horse throws him, she muttered. Edmure looked at Sansa, face twisted. I'm sorry, he said awkwardly, as if apologizing for the existence of the South. That he looked at you like property, Sansa finished quietly. Catelyn's hand came to Sansa's shoulder. Firm. You are not property, she said. Not to them. Not to anyone. Sansa nodded, swallowing hard. She felt anger inside her, clean and cold. She thought of all the times she had wanted to be seen by men like that envoy, wanted their approval like sunlight. Now she wanted to burn their eyes out for daring to measure her. She leaned closer to her mother, voice low. He was lying about mercy, she said. But he wasn't lying about one thing. Catelyn's gaze sharpened. Which? They don't know where father is, Sansa whispered. Not exactly. If they did, they wouldn't send a man with words. They'd send men with swords. Catelyn's mouth tightened. She glanced toward the gate, toward the road. Then we must keep it that way, she murmured. Sansa's eyes followed the road too, and for a moment she imagined Sandor Clegane riding it. His burned face turned toward Riverrun. His mouth curled in that ugly half-smile. She remembered how his men had hunted at the docks, how quickly the world turned. We should send a raven, Sansa said quietly, to father. Warn him the crown is using envoys. They'll try anything. Catelyn nodded once. We will, she said. As servants hurried to fetch parchment, Sansa watched the courtyard fill again with motion. Men drilling, guards changing shifts, Arya wandering off to find someone to fight. Riverrun was a living thing bracing for a blow, and Sansa, standing in the center of it, realized she was bracing too. Not with a sword, but with eyes that had learned to see the lie beneath the velvet. The first banners of the north appeared like a dream made of snow and iron. They came over the rise beyond the river road, dark shapes against a pale sky. Lines of men on foot and horse, packs and wagons, spears like a forest. Direwolves snapped in the wind, gray and white, black and green. The sound of them carried before the men did. Drums, low and steady, beating like a giant heart. Sansa stood at Riverrun's gatehouse when the horn blew, feeling the stone vibrate beneath her boots. She pressed her hands to the parapet and leaned forward, eyes straining. For a heartbeat she thought she might see her father at their head. Thought she might see him riding in with Blackfish's hard grin beside him. Instead she saw Robb. He looked older than the last time she'd seen him. Not in height alone, though he sat his horse like a man now, shoulders squared. It was in the set of his mouth, the way his eyes swept the walls and the yard with a commander's caution rather than a son's wonder. He wore a cloak lined with fur, and beneath it mail that caught pale light. Gray wind paced at his horse's flank, a shadow with teeth. The gates opened. The north poured in. Men who had once warmed themselves by Winterfell's fires marched across Riverrun's yard, their faces grim. Great John Umber's laugh boomed even in greeting, loud and fearless, as if daring the world to strike him. Roose Bolton rode with pale calm, eyes like chips of ice. Rickard Karstark's mouth was set in a hard line that made him look carved from stone. The Mormonts were not yet with them, but their names were spoken like prayers. Catelyn descended the steps with a quick, controlled stride. When Robb dismounted, she moved to him and clasped his face in both hands, as she had done with Ned. Her eyes shone, but her voice was steady. "My son," she whispered. Robb's expression cracked for a heartbeat, the boy inside him surfacing. "Mother," he said, voice thick. Then he saw Sansa. Sansa froze. She had imagined this moment in 100 ways. Robb running to her, laughing, lifting her off her feet. Robb scolding her for ever wanting King's Landing. Robb looking at her like she was broken. What happened was stranger. Robb stepped toward her slowly, as if approaching something fragile. His eyes moved over her, her plain dress, her wind-reddened cheeks, the faint bruises on her hands that had not fully faded. He swallowed. "Sansa," he said softly. Sansa's throat tightened. She took a step forward, then another, and then she was in his arms, clinging to him with a fierceness that startled her. Robb held her like he might never let go, his grip strong, his breath shuddering once. "I thought," he began, voice breaking, then he stopped. He pulled back and looked at her again, eyes bright with anger now. "They said you were in the Red Keep. They said. They lied," Sansa whispered. Robb's jaw tightened. "I know." He glanced toward Catelyn. "Where is father?" The question hit the yard like an axe. Catelyn's face hardened. "Riding," she said, "with Brynden. The Hound is hunting him." A ripple ran through the northern men. Great John Umber's hand went to his sword. "Let me at that dog," he rumbled. Roose Bolton's eyes narrowed. "We should not be caught in open ground without knowing where Tywin is," he said calmly, as if discussing weather. Robb's expression went cold in a way Sansa had never seen. He nodded once, slow. "Then we find father," he said, "and we kill whoever stands between him and home." Sansa watched her brother, and something inside her shifted. In Winterfell, Robb had been her brother, the boy who teased her and stole her sweets. Here, with banners behind him and men watching his every breath, he looked like a lord, like the North itself given a young face. Edmure rushed forward, flustered, trying to welcome the host and explain the castle's defenses. Robb listened politely but impatiently, eyes already searching for maps, for answers. In the chaos of arrival, horses being led away, men being assigned quarters, cooks rushing to feed an army, Sansa found herself pulled aside by a pair of northern women who had come with the host. A grizzled crone with a bare pin and a younger woman with hard eyes. They looked Sansa up and down, then nodded as if satisfied she was real. "You're alive," the younger one said, voice blunt. Sansa blinked. "Yes," she managed. "Good," the older one grunted. "Dead girls don't make good symbols." Sansa's stomach tightened. Symbol. She had been a symbol in King's Landing too. Only there she had not understood it. Here it was spoken aloud without shame. It made her want to be sick. Catelyn called her back. Robb stood over a table now, maps spread, captains clustering. Sansa lingered near the edge, listening. Names flew. The Green Fork, the Red Fork, the Trident, the Twins, Harrenhal. Decisions hardened. When Walder Frey's name was mentioned, Robb's mouth tightened. "He's agreed?" he asked. Catelyn's gaze flicked to Sansa. "A raven returned," she said. "He will speak with us. He wants terms." Robb exhaled sharply. "Then we give him what we must," he said, and his voice carried the grim acceptance of a leader. Sansa watched him, then looked down at the map where the road south ran like a vein toward King's Landing. Somewhere along that vein her father rode with hunters behind him. The thought made her chest ache. She leaned closer to Catelyn and whispered, "He won't open that gate for love." Catelyn's eyes met hers, fierce. "No," she whispered back. "He will open it for advantage." Sansa's fingers curled. Advantage. That was the language now. She looked at Robb again. His face was young, but his eyes were not. And she realized something that frightened and steadied her at once. The North had come, and it would not leave without blood. The war she had watched on parchment had stepped into the yard wearing fur and iron, and she was in it. The gates of Riverrun opened again at nightfall, not for banners and drums, but for riders who came in hard and fast with mud up to their knees and fear like smoke behind them. Sansa heard the horn from her chamber and was on her feet before the second note faded. She pulled on her cloak with shaking hands, heart already hammering. Arya burst in without knocking, eyes bright. "Something's happening," Arya hissed, grinning like she hoped it was a fight. Sansa did not answer. She ran. The courtyard was chaos. torches flaring, men shouting, horses screaming. Northern soldiers poured toward the gatehouse, swords half-drawn, armor not fully buckled. River men scrambled to form lines. Someone shouted Robb's name. Sansa pushed through bodies until she reached the edge of the crowd and saw the riders. Blackfish rode in first, his horse lathered white, his face hard. Behind him came men with arrows in their shields, blood on their sleeves, eyes wild. And then,
Ned.
He was hunched in the saddle, cloak torn, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat and rain. His face was streaked with mud. For a heartbeat Sansa could not move, as if her body did not believe what her eyes were offering. Then Ned slid from the horse with a grimace and stood. Sansa's breath broke out of her like a sob. She ran forward, heedless of soldiers and torches and the stink of sweat. Ned turned, and his eyes found her. Something in his expression softened. "Sansa," he breathed. She crashed into him and clung, arms locked around his waist. His mail was cold beneath her cheek, his cloak damp, his body solid. Alive, alive. The word rang in her head like a bell. Ned's arms came around her, fierce. He held her as if he could pull her back inside him where no one could reach. She felt his breath shudder once against her hair. "You're hurt," she whispered, pulling back enough to search his face. "Not badly," Ned said, though his voice was rough. He glanced past her. "Where is your mother?" Catelyn shoved through the crowd then, face pale, eyes blazing. She reached Ned and touched his face with trembling hands, the same desperate checking she had done when he arrived the first time. "You," she whispered, and then her voice broke. "You came back." "I said I would," Ned murmured. Robb arrived a heartbeat later, moving like a storm. He stopped short when he saw Ned, as if his body needed a moment to accept it. Then his jaw tightened, and he stepped forward, gripping Ned's forearm hard. "Father," Robb said, voice thick. It was not a boy's greeting. It was a soldier's relief. Ned's hand closed over Robb's. "My son," he said quietly. Blackfish barked, impatient, cutting through the reunion like a knife. "Save your kisses," he growled. "The dog's on our heels." The courtyard stilled. Even the horses seemed to listen. "How close?" Robb demanded. "Hours," Blackfish said. He jerked his chin toward the riders behind him. "We led him in circles through mud and reeds. Lost a few men, gained a few holes. But he's stubborn. He'll come." Ned's mouth was hard. "Sandor Clegane knows we're here," he said. Catelyn's eyes flashed. "Then we bar the gates," she snapped. "We hold Riverrun." Roose Bolton stepped from the shadows, pale and calm despite the chaos. "Holding is one thing," he said softly. "But if Tywin marches, a siege will strangle you. A siege will starve you. The Hound is not the only mouth in the south." Great John Umber laughed, loud and savage. "Let 'em come," he boomed. "We'll feed 'em steel." Robb raised a hand, and the yard quieted. Sansa watched the way men obeyed him, the way silence formed around his gesture. Her brother, her young brother, was commanding an army. The world had changed too quickly. Robb's eyes flicked to Ned. "What do we do?" he asked, and Sansa heard the respect in it, the willingness to be guided. Ned's gaze swept the yard, taking in torches and faces and walls. He looked at Catelyn, at Robb, at Sansa and Arya pressed close, and something settled into him like a decision that had been waiting since the bells of King's Landing began to toll. "We stop running," Ned said. A ripple went through the men. Even Arya's grin faltered, turning sharp with excitement. Ned's voice carried now, steady and clear. "The crown calls me traitor," he said. "It will call all of you traitors for standing with me. It will burn your villages and hang your sons. It will take your daughters and call it mercy. We have seen the truth of it." He looked at Sansa, and for a heartbeat his eyes softened, as if remembering her lantern swinging, her hands steady with ink. "We will answer with our own truth," he continued. "We will not bend to a boy on a stolen throne. We will not kneel to lions who rule with fire. Catelyn's hand tightened on his arm. Robb's face was set, eyes bright with fierce resolve. Ned turned slightly, addressing not only Northmen and Rivermen but the stone itself. "We will declare for Stannis Baratheon," he said, "for the lawful claim, for the realm's law, and we will march to make the South choke on its lies." A low growl of approval rose from the north. Riverlords murmured, some uneasy, some eager. War had just been named plainly, without the softness of half measures. Robb nodded once, sharp. "Then we march," he said. Blackfish grinned like a man who loved the taste of danger. "Now you're speaking sense," he muttered. Sansa stood amid torches and steel and felt her heart pounding. Not only with fear but with something else, purpose. The envoy's eyes on her, the proclamation calling her father traitor, the burned village, the spy's trembling confession. All of it braided into a single line. This was what they were now. A family hunted into becoming a banner. A girl who had escaped a cage and learned that safety was built with choices, not prayers. Later, when the courtyard quieted and men returned to barracks and the gate was barred heavy, Sansa climbed the battlements again. The night air was cold and smelled faintly of river. Far off to the south, a line of torchlight flickered in the dark like a moving serpent. Riders, perhaps. Hunters. The Hound's men sniffing for a crack in stone. Sansa rested her hands on the parapet and watched the distant lights with steady eyes. She did not pray. She did not weep. She simply stood, feeling the castle beneath her feet and the war beyond its walls, and she let the cold settle into her bones like a promise. Let them come, she thought again, and this time there was no surprise in the thought, only certainty. If they came for her, they would find she was no longer a songbird in a gilded cage. They would find a Stark,